make it safer to use, we use larger values, right? For example, integer and long. So integers can contain anything between this range. However, if you see, or if you think that the numbers that I'm going to use are going to be larger numbers, with -2 to 2 billion numbers or range, right, you would use long, right? Single, so these are decimal numbers with 7 digits precision. Double would be with 15 digits, depending on your use case. For most of times, I think single decimal would do, but I see it as a regular practice that people simply just do double, right? These things will not matter for smaller use cases. However, if you are working on a relatively larger project, okay, these things will be considered as places to optimize your code. Another side note here would be, once you are at a place where you have to choose from single to double or double to single in your project, which is larger enough, I believe that you will not be working on Excel or VBA anymore, right? You would be choosing some other tools such as Python or Power BI for data processing and EDA and other stuff, because Excel, even though it's one of the most powerful tools available for anything related to data, it has limitations to what kind of size it can deal with, what kind of processing it can do. So VBA is a fairly slow language when it is compared to C or C++, or even Python for that matter, unless your code is optimized. Currency, strings, you already know. Boolean, I think we have already covered all these. These two are newer formats that you would see within VBA, and these are again related to exactly what we use in Excel. So variant is a data type that can store anything which is equivalent to general format in Excel, right? So if I do control 1 here, you would see this category of general number formatting, right? And general is something that have no specific number format, or basically no format at all. So it can take anything which is available, and it can use it as the value suggests. So if it is a number, it will treat it as number. If it is text, it will treat it as text. So this is what variant is. Object, on the other hand, is like I said, anything which you see on Excel is an object if you want to treat it like that, something which has properties and values, right? So when you are going to open and save workbooks, you have to define them as objects so that you can call them or call their I will give a brief on the object model within Excel once again, so that you understand when you are writing your code what all things you would have to consider. So back to the previous code that we recorded and we saw in VBA module, we saw that there were a couple of things that I noticed, which was, when I copied the data, I did not mention the sheet, like from which sheet it is coming. And when I pasted the data, I did not mention exactly what range I need to paste it to, right? So for this, I also mentioned that we have to use problem solving skills, which would be in this case is to break down the problem into very smaller mini tasks. So one example for problem solving would be copy the data, right? Copy the data is, if you look at the problem, the copy of the data would be broken down into these steps. First, we have to identify what data and where the data lies, right? So for example, if the data is in the current workbook, or it is in a separate workbook saved somewhere on your system or on drive or somewhere else, right? So getting that file, that's step number 1. And then within that file, where exactly is this data, right? That's point number 2, right? And then you select the data in order to copy it. right? You could argue that you might have to filter a few things, right? But just to keep it simple and still detailed enough, right? You select the data and then you copy it, right? So all these 4 or 5 steps create your copy um, step, right, in your code, right? So when you start doing a simple copy and paste job as well, using a programming language, it becomes very important that you understand that a single word does not mean a single line of code. It means a single word can be a process in itself, right? And identifying this is what makes you a good developer. Okay, now let's talk about the object model one more time. So the highest is the VBA project, right? And then you have workbooks, and then you have worksheets, and then you have rows or columns or range, and then you have cell, right? This is your basic hierarchy of the entire object model, right? um, we can have other things also. So within cell we can have an image, right? It could be merge cells, etc., right? So all of these are also objects. However, based on where they are saved or where you see them, their position might change from, below or above cell. Okay, and then you have other objects such as pivots, charts, and so on, right? So all of this creates your object model, right? The way you would read this table is the top one is the largest bucket where you store any other object within Excel, and this larger bucket contains smaller buckets, which is workbook, and this bucket contains every other bucket, and so on, right? This will give you an idea exactly what you're dealing with. And just to point this out, last 3 cells are almost, so you cannot say that pivot is within a cell, right? Pivot can be a combination of multiple cells, right? So however, we do not go to a range in order to select a pivot, because pivot comes with its own name and it is recognized by VBA as a separate object. Let's talk about user defined functions, and as you can see, I have a few statements or the code for pre-written custom functions for Excel, but I'll start with a very simple example and a very simple use case, right? So let me go to Excel, make it bigger. Okay, so let's say I have a case, okay, and the case is make the number double. Okay, so some of the test cases that I would want to perform is, if I have been given 2, I need to get 4. If I am given, let's say, 12.5, I need to get 25. If I get, let's say, 1.33, I should get this 2.66, right? So it should equally work for numbers and floating points and so on, right? So I want to create a custom function for this, right? Of course we can create complex functions, but this is just to give you an idea exactly what to do, right?